You're listening to The Inner Strength Show. If you want to step into your greatness, you've come to the right place. Here is your host, the human strength expert, Kyle Newell.
What's up, guys? It's Kyle back at you with show number 7 of Unlocking Your Inner Strength. Been having a blast with this, so I hope you're enjoying listening to it. And I thank you for spreading the word to your friends. This show, guys, is all about me sharing stories and lessons and weird, I guess you would call it weird knowledge I've accumulated throughout the years of just being an avid and voracious learner. And it's about human strength. So when we talk about human strength, that's not just physical strength. Yes, that was how I got started on this path of being a strength coach, personal trainer first and strength coach, strength and conditioning specialist. But I always knew that the mind and spirit were the key. I'm here to bring you guys down that path towards happiness. And happiness is the path. Just like the Buddha had said, happiness is not a destination. It really isn't. And anything on the way to a goal that makes you unhappy lets you know that you're on the wrong path, because the purpose of any goal should be to lead us to more happiness. So I think that that's a good transition into what we're going to be talking about today. Today, I wanted to go over some of mind mapping and what it is. And I've got to give all the credit in the world to Dax Moy, who is he's the man, very interesting, unique person, someone that I look up to. I had the chance of going to one of Dax's weekend workshops that happened to be here in New Jersey. And, I went to hear what it was all about. Been following him for a while. And I just fell in love with the neuroscience and the science of transformation. And I always thought and I always knew that if I was not doing what I'm currently doing, then I would have been a psychiatrist or psychologist, because I just love mind and I love brain science. So anyway, that was October of a few years ago. Dax decided to open up a mastery course, which is still going on. So it's going on over a year and a half of mind map. And there's no particular book on the topic. It's not something you can get a book on and just say, okay, I'm going to learn mind map. It's a collection of theories based in neuroscience, based in physiology, based in all types of stuff, okay? And I've taken it and kind of added my own things to it, read some different things. And every time I teach this stuff and talk about it or give presentations on it, I make new connections. And that's one of the great reasons of teaching something, guys. You're going to learn more about it when you teach it. And how we've used this at the gym is usually people are under threat, okay? And what I mean by that is they're overly sympathetic. And I don't mean they don't feel sorry for somebody. The sympathetic nervous system is fight, flight, or freeze. So let's start with that. The way the body responds to stress, okay? So as humans, we've developed this weird knack or ability to always be turned on, so to say. Get your mind out of the gutter. That's not what I mean. What I do mean is we have two branches of the autonomic nervous system. The sympathetic, which I just mentioned, and that's your stress response. That's fight, flight, or freeze. That's survival. Or the parasympathetic, the flip side of that, which is rest and digest and recovery. Okay? Now, there's a great book by Robert Sapolsky, and the book is called Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. And what he's talking about in that book is the fact that if a zebra was getting chased by a lion, okay, and keep in mind Sapolsky's a stress researcher at Stanford University. That's what he studies. So if a zebra is getting chased by a lion, it either gets killed and eaten or it escapes, but it doesn't stay in this frenzied and super stressed out state. It returns back to baseline and to normal. Now, as humans, with artificial light, with cell phones, with all these things, in unnormal sleep schedules and hours because of this artificial technology, we've kind of put that switch on and left it on, which is, I firmly believe that's why you see most of the health problems you see, why you see the obesity and overweight problem that we have in the world, not just in the country. And so it's important to know that, if you're overly stressed, so think about that. Everything the brain and body do, okay, the brain is hardwired for survival, first and foremost. The body, is built for survival. And we can get into a whole bunch of stuff with dieting and nutrition in another episode. But if the brain is hardwired for survival, it means it's constantly scanning, okay, for the negative and the threats. So that's what I mean by a threat, the threat to your very being. And if somebody broke into our house and, I heard the person and Devin and Braxton were sleeping, I'm probably going to go into fight mode. Our survival is on the line. And I don't have too many options. I can't really run or flight or flee because, I can't leave them behind. That would be that wouldn't be the what a man is supposed to do. That would be the cowardly thing to do. If, let's say, some kind of predator or some big guy, okay, so we'll say some big guy at a bar pulls out a knife and I see his buddies in the corner. They're about to attack me too. I'm probably going to run out the door. I'm going to flee. Okay, that's my survival instinct in that particular instance. Now, let's say a bear was chasing me. A lot of the time, since we can't really outrun a predator like that, the human body or the human brain will just simply pass out. And the reason it does that is because a predator will not eat something that it thinks is, has been killed by another predator in the area. So the body is brilliant. The brain is brilliant. It says, okay, I'm just going to freeze. I'm going to play dead and ensure my survival for another day. So how does that apply to life? The way that applies to everyday life is most of the times we cannot, we're overly stressed and we can't run from the situation. You can't usually just run away from your job or your family or your financial troubles. You can't really physically fight it, okay? And trying to fight it sometimes causes stress levels to rise even higher. So most people go into what I see often is a freeze mode. Now, the freeze mode, think about when you're slightly depressed and everybody's been there before. It's very hard to wake up in the morning. And that's freeze mode. It's saying, okay, I can't run. I can't fight it. So I'm just going to go to freeze mode to escape life, to escape this situation. And the body, the nervous system, it's important to know too, does not differentiate necessarily between stressors. We have something called allostatic load, which is basically our ability to handle whatever amount of stress. Everybody is different. Okay, so as I'm sitting here, I got my water bottle. Actually going to take a sip. Hold on a second. And if that water bottle represented my capacity to handle stress, right? Now, let's say it's filled up with water. That's my tolerance. And I start pouring water out over here, water out over there, water out over here. Once that's gone, once my ability to handle stress is gone and depleted, it's gone. And I need to let it rebuild through rest and recovery and relaxation. Okay, so if you just think about all the stressors in your life, I want you to jot down on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the most stressed out you've ever been in your life, where are you right now? So go ahead, take a second to do that. And while you're doing that, let's say you came up as an 8. The goal is not to get you to a 0 right away. It's to get you to a 7. So I told you last week we're going to -1 you with this, okay? So we want to figure out what's the, when I do these consults, these mind map sessions, I say, okay, what's the top of mind emotion you've been feeling as of late? And sometimes people will say anxious or frightened or overwhelmed or stressed. So it's whatever that person is feeling, whatever you're feeling right now, okay? Now, to get you out of that state, okay, we need to start getting rid of the clutter, all right? So then I would ask the person more questions. Well, what's causing that? What do you feel is causing that? And sometimes they're clear on what's causing it. Sometimes they're not. But I use a couple guidelines when I'm trying to coach somebody through this stuff. And the first one is knowing 3 paths that cause us to be in a stressed state and to be in a threat mode is when things are going too fast, too slow, or they're unclear. Okay, so let's use nutrition as an example. If you came in off the street, like we used to have, not off the street literally, but we used to have people come in and say, okay, here's a diet based on your weight. Way too fast for most people. You can't form habit around it. Let's say now the person says, I want to change. And 3 months down the road, you're still on the same habit. We're still working on the same thing. They're going to be in threat mode. They're going to be frustrated. Or using that diet example, most of the time when you give somebody a diet plan like that, it's completely foreign. It's like a foreign language to them. So it's unclear. And I want you to think about where the lack of clarity comes up and nips you in the butt in your relationships. If you're thinking something, somebody else is thinking something, let's say it's your wife or your husband, and it's unspoken, there's going to be a high level of threat in that relationship, in that environment, because there's a lack of clarity. Now remember, the brain is a pattern recognition machine, okay? Prediction and response, prediction and response. That's what it's for, really, okay? And this whole premise of mind mapping is that it's based on the triune brain theory. So we have the reptilian brain, which is the oldest part of the brain, the mammalian brain, which is the next part they're layered on top of that, and then the cortex, or the prefrontal cortex, or the human part of the brain, okay, which is the last part to evolve. And the reptile brain is really just there for reproduction, okay, sex and food. That's your road rage. That is your, that's lightning quick response. That's reaction. It's not response, okay? Or prediction response is a human thing, okay, for the most part. The next layer got the mammalian brain, which is, the emotional centers of our brain, the memory centers of our brain. You have different structures located there, like the anterior cingulate cortex, which is bigger and more pronounced in females because estrogen enhances that, all right? And the reason that is bigger in females is so they can be there to nurture their kids and ensure their survival and ensure that they could have kids in turn, right? And then we have the prefrontal cortex, which is the human brain, the human part of the brain that wants to set goals. It wants change. It wants to, to grow. And as I'm sitting here, I'm looking at Maslow's hierarchy of human needs. This kind of fits exactly in with going up the scale of the triune brain. So at the reptilian level, we have physiological needs, food, water, sleep, safety, all right? Then the next two, we have esteem, okay? It was right above love and belonging. That's like your mammalian brain. And to get to the top, self-actualization, okay, living at your highest potential, that's your human part of the brain. That's the part that wants to set goals and achieve goals and create your art. Well, you can't get to the top of the pyramid if something's lacking down further below, right? When we're trying to create a transformation, remember, transformation is permanent, change is temporary, change is easy to do in many situations. But you can never out-goal a threat, because to set a goal, we're going to need to form habits. To form habits, we need to be be able to hold that conscious thought long enough in our prefrontal cortex until it can move into what's called the basal ganglia, where it becomes a permanent habit and it becomes mindless. Okay, but if we're in threat mode, let's say somebody just broke up with you and you're saying, okay, I got to make sure I'm eating this much And then all of a sudden you get emotional and you start thinking about that and you go off your diet. It's a back and forth. The mammalian brain and the prefrontal cortex are basically, to simplify, they kind of function as opposites. Okay, if you're overly analytical and type A, your emotional centers are going to be diminished. Okay, if you're overly emotional, logic goes out the window. And talking about being able to set habits and follow through with habits, it's also very important to know that the brain will only form habit around things that it finds pleasurable. It will not form habit around things it hates to do. When you think of the word willpower, it's probably doing shit that you don't want to do and that you can't wait to be over. And that's a recipe for disaster if we're trying to go for transformation. And now 2 other things, guys, that could put us, that they greatly affect, I should say, our stress response or our threat level, is the environments and judgment. Okay, environments, because the most threatening time of the day, okay, and that's why your stress hormones spike at that time, cortisol, etc., is when we wake up, going from an unconscious state to a conscious state, because the brain is saying, okay, I'm waking up, I don't know what's coming at me. It goes into a threat mode and into a high alertness mode, okay, which, by the way, as I've talked about before, is one reason you should not eat breakfast upon waking. When we're in environments where we don't like people, the brain finds that very threatening, okay? And kind of along with that is this idea of judgment. Judgment is very threatening to the mammalian part of the brain, because if I judge you and go back thousands of years and we say, okay, we don't like Bob, we're going to put him on the outside of the pack. Well, as we move Bob to the outside of the pack, his chance for survival goes down. That's where the predators roam. Then we say, we've had it with you, Bob. We're kicking you out of the tribe. Now he's by himself out there with the wolves and the tigers and the bears and the lions. He's got no chance to survive, okay? So that's why we as humans are so sensitive to judgment, and it's something we have to be aware of, and we got to constantly monitor the environments consciously, because you have something called the amygdala, which is always scanning your environments. It might be that your desk is too cluttered, or your room is too cluttered, or you don't like the people you work with, or you don't like the people you're eating lunch with, or your cell phone is on and it's the weekend, but you might get a business call. The amygdala is always scanning, and it's raising your stress response, I would say, and lowering your hedonic tone. If hedonic tone is low, that's when threat sets in, stress sets in, and our level of joy and happiness goes down. You have to really take into consideration, guys, that information is never the problem, okay? Information by itself is useless. And if it came down to, I'll go back to that example of exercise and nutrition. Information is not a secret. It's readily available. You could just Google what to eat, or you could find your answers, but it's okay. Why are you not following through with it? All right. So it's not, in many cases, information that's the issue. It goes to show you that the nervous system and these autopilots that are in the brain are running things a lot more than we think. And by the way, it also takes on average 66 days to form a habit, not 21 days. 21 days is on the low end. But that's what you hear thrown out there a lot. But it's 66 days, so a little more than 2 months. And remember, you got to be able to hold that new thought, okay, that new habit in front of mind for a long enough period of time to move it deeper into the brain, okay, where it becomes a habit and becomes autopilot. So, guys, with mind map, I could go on forever with this stuff. I just love it, but I don't want to extend the show too much longer. So what I'll do is in the future, we'll come back. I'll get some feedback from some of the listeners, from you guys, about other areas of mind map, how it affects certain things, how it affects goal setting. And I'll do another show on mind map. I'm sure I'll do a bunch more shows on mind map, because it's a true passion of mine, something I use when I'm coaching people a lot. It's my favorite thing to present on. So, remember the myth of willpower, that willpower cannot ever lead to habit formation, okay? The causes of threat: too fast, too slow, unclear, so lack of clarity. And remember the environments and judgment are very threatening to the mammalian part of the brain. And by the way, while I'm thinking of it, the reason, I had my therapist say this to me a long time ago. She said, Kyle, you act so different around Martina, which was our only dog at the time, our silver lab, than you do around anybody else. And I said, yeah, I guess I feel safe around her. But the reason pet therapy works is because you're connecting on a mammalian level, and that's the part of your brain where connection thrives. Most people are lacking that in their life. They don't get to look somebody else in the eye and have no fear of judgment. Your dog is not going to judge you, okay? But you're going to connect with them on a deep level, and it's very, very powerful. So anyway, moving on from that, and just remember the nervous systems, right, of the autonomic branch. You got the sympathetic, which is fight, flight, or freeze. That's your stress response. You got parasympathetic, which is rest, digest, and recover. Okay, that's the state we need to be in to eat and digest properly and to sleep and get well rested, so our brain functions at a high level. So again, I'll be coming back with some more mind map stuff in the future. Next week's show, really cool stuff. I'm going to be talking about one of my brothers, who we call Presh affectionately, one of the top poker players in the world, but how he followed his path and the lessons I learned from that, and something called TMS, which is another passion of mine, where it's psychomotive types of medicine, and then just kind of knowing your strengths, how that stuff tied in and led me down a certain path, and hopefully we'll be able to help you tie in some of your strengths and know which path you're on. So, remember that this is all about making you better. I thank you from the bottom of my heart for listening. Focus on fun, freedom, and fulfillment in the week ahead, and how you're going to activate each areas of your spirit, those 3 F's. Jot something down right now that you can do for each one of those things, and make sure you do it. And I can't wait to hear about the great things that you do, and keep spreading the word about unlocking your inner strength. I'll be back next week for show number 8. Peace, guys.
You've been listening to The Inner Strength Show. If you enjoyed the show, remember to subscribe, rate, and review us in iTunes.